Okay, so welcome to our next session. I'd like to introduce our facilitator, monitor, presenter, however you want to, whatever title you want to give them, and our co-chair for Music United. Byron Hermann directed his first church choir at the age of 15 and has been active in all parts of the choral world since that time. And he studied piano, organ, and composition at the University of Western Ontario, at the same time studying for the priesthood at St. Peter's Seminary. He subsequently moved to Montreal and obtained a Master's of Music degree in composition from McGill, studying with, amongst others, I have no idea how to say that name, I'm sorry, Lanza.
Alcides, yeah.
Alcides, okay, Alcides Lanza, Don Patriquin, Bengt Hembreus, and Bruce Mather. I'm assuming that's correct. He later obtained a certificate in education from the Université de Québec à Montréal. This interest in music education led to studies in Toronto at the Ontario Institute of Education for Studies in Education, and he was, sorry, print's getting awfully small. And a master's degree in education. After graduating in 1985, he received an SSHRC award for PhD studies in cognitive science, specializing in music cognition and early emergence of learning strategies in children. He has won several composition competitions and has also received commissions for choral works from ensembles such as the St. Lawrence Choir, Goulburn Men's Choir, Cantabile Singers, Camerata Singers, and Nova Voce. He has traveled and performed throughout Asia, including 10 years in Taiwan, where he wrote and produced 8 CDs of children's songs for use in the classroom. He has taught at Memorial University and continues to write extensively for church choir, including anthems, mass settings, and songs. He is presently director of music at Stairs Memorial United Church in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, and enjoys his nature paradise by the sea near Peggy's Cove. So welcome, Byron. We're sorry you're not able to be with us in person, but we're happy to have you online. And you can take over from here.
Okay, well, okay. I hope you can all hear me just fine. And I'm obviously sorry I can't be there in person, but the Spirit has chosen to call me to do other things, which is amazing, actually, how the Spirit works. And no matter what happens to you, what your circumstances are, there is a reason, and you find those reasons, and it is a joy to find those reasons. So I just wanted to start quickly with a land acknowledgement from here. I'm in the land Mi'kma'ki, the traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people here in Nova Scotia. And it's always important to share our land acknowledgements, knowing where we are and the why we are able to share what it is that we've been given. Um, we did a lot of singing already, and then let us sing session. So I'm just going to kind of bypass an opening song of any sorts, and let's get right at it. The idea of this session was to share our stories. Being a person who monitors our Facebook pages and our social media, there's an awful lot of really interesting discussions that go on around our needs, our wants, and our successes, and some of our failures. So, wanted to have us a chance to discuss some of that. So, I'm going to just start with some topics that come up quite a bit. The first one that was very popular is uh, how do we work with our worship team at church? And I'm going to be just throwing out some ideas, and this is to be an open discussion regarding these stories that you have and things that have happened in your particular church. Uh, so over the many years that I've been involved, we all have different ways that we interact with our worship planning. Some of us have a worship team. Some of us have a worship committee. Some of us just work with our minister. Some of us are kind of told, okay, this is what you're going to be doing. Uh, and so we have all these different scenarios that create interesting ways for how do we choose our music for worship, which is obviously a really important part of our work as music ministers. So I'd like to start the discussion there. If anyone's uh, some comments on what your relationship is with how you choose the music in your particular congregation or for planning your worship. Uh, I assume we have microphones there.
And then we're all just going to have to really talk loud.
Perfect.
And enunciate clearly. Yeah, if you can't hear anyone, Byron, just ask them to repeat. The
Okay.
owl here will fairly
It's all
well.
good. So it's all good so far.
Okay.
And just so you know, the owl follows whoever's speaking too.
Cool.
So Byron can see who it is.
Where would you get one of those?
Everything's online.
It's Kim here. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Hi, Kim. We all see you
Hi,
too.
everybody. So happy to see you. Byron, just to answer just to start the discussion, I see myself as a church musician, as a kind of a leader, um, and a facilitator and an encourager of music in a congregation. And I have done whatever people have wanted me to do. In some cases, I've worked with very gifted clergy who are very music minded. And so they have strong views of certain selections of music that they want in their worship services and in worship planning. And it is a joy to work collaboratively with those people. The other side of the coin is um, a severely academic type of clergy person who has no clue. And we as the musicians, we hear it from all sides. If your choir hates it, they can't sing it, your congregation is not familiar and in their comfort zone. Um, what I find is a real challenge is that our expertise and our training is not valued in our congregations. Um, we are not seen as leaders. We are not seen as consultants. We are not seen as professionals. In some cases, we're the person who plays the piano and the organ, and we'll tell you what to do. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Just
So
yeah,
I
sorry,
just share that as a starting point.
yeah, just a response to that, Kim. I have a sheet here of talking points, and my next talking point is your experience welcome and respected? And you just pointed that out that in some situations it's not, and I suppose men, if I can throw that question out to others, how do we deal with getting our expertise welcome and respected?
Yeah, I was just going to throw in, we're partly dealing with the history of music ministry in different congregations. If the previous incumbent was somebody who said, just give me the hymns and I'll play them, then that's what people think the norm is, and so a new person who comes in is not necessarily treated the way they would like to be. So I would hope that congregations can be clear when they're hiring, what they're hiring for. I would hope that musicians ask for what they need. We can help to solve some of this by saying, like my context, I am used to, I don't like to say I have the final say, but I work collaboratively with the clergy, but I'm able to say, this is what I need. I can't do my job unless I can support the music that is chosen and represent it well. So.
To go with that, Bruce, officially on my job description, I have the final veto.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
But
Something
I
clear.
have the final veto because it is written in the job description that I am the one who's going to best understand what music works for this congregation. However, we're dealing with a lot of supply ministers right now and licensed worship leaders, and no one wants to defer to the church musician. It's just, but I want this one. Okay, but we don't know it. Or it may not be covered by one license right now, or it's this, or it's this. Like I'm not saying no because I don't like it. I'm saying no for valid reasons. And that's really frustrating when that is, and I've actually had visiting preachers complain to the chair of session that I am not accommodating them, when in fact, that's my job. And it's very frustrating.
The chair of session then should be handing your job description to that person as a response.
They should, but they don't.
Well, that would be an issue for your M&P committee, I would say.
Yes. And it was
Well-functioning M&P committees is another issue.
Yes.
I've never had one.
Yeah, well, maybe touch on that in a moment. There's also the idea of church musicians like ourselves as theologians. I mean, we're not just a bunch of people who learn a bunch of music. We are, in fact, we are theologians, and we try to integrate with our committees the themes, the way the worship wants to progress. So it's not just, oh yeah, let's just choose some music and completely forget about the theology of what's going on. And we see that happen many times the minister says we only have 3 minutes left, so we're going to kind of cut out verse 5 and 6, right? Like there's a whole story to be told. I mean, how many times have we heard that in an actual worship situation where the announcements went too long, so we're just going to cut the last hymn. So that's another kind of frustrating situation that happens to church musicians as theologians. So what do? Do you go and talk to them afterwards? Do you just let it go? I'm a kind of let it go person, but then it starts to percolate. So are there people out there who will talk it out with your minister, and you have a nice, I would say, intimate, for lack of a better word, relationship that allows you to discuss things openly? Or is it this kind of relationship where you're either afraid or said, oh, so be it? And maybe any comments on that?
We do have a variety of musical skill levels serving our churches. So I know in some cases people have bare accompaniment skills, no understanding of how to use an index in a hymn book, all of that. So I come from a fairly professional background in this, but I recognize that there's a breadth of experience. And even with our clergy, I work with a clergy person who we did our Bachelor of Music degrees together years back and so on. So she has musical training and understanding, but she also is one of the first clergy I worked with who does defer to me and just let me do my job. And yet when she suggests something, she suggests it from a musical frame of mind, so she understands that side of it too. So I'm quite blessed where I am right now. But that's not always the case. I know people who have a lot of training and are in a congregation where they have no power whatsoever. So yes, they could be doing the job you're talking about, Byron, but they're not allowed to. So.
A previous minister I worked with refused to believe that I could understand the Bible because I had not taken an advanced degree in theology or divinity.
Yeah.
And I found that offensive, and there was no way to get past that. Wow. It didn't matter, and I would send my suggestions and I would point out how it went with the message, but
yeah.
And I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But the lack of trust can be quite crippling. And when you try to talk it out, which I did, because no one's ever going to accuse me of not having words. And it never went well. So.
Could I say 2 things?
Please.
In the Mennonites in planning their new hymn book, I understand that they're cutting out verses. That's their game plan. They think that a hymn should not be longer than 3 verses.
Why?
And the other thing is, when a minister suggests something that I know the congregation does not know, then I suggest what the Hymn Society taught me, that you don't have to sing everything. There's no harm in reading for the poetry's sake.
That's right.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's again, like, for the sake of 30 seconds it might take to do another verse. There's that feeling as well that it's quite long. But just to change gears a little bit, our view of ourselves as leaders of the congregation, as opposed to just performers or creating a performance with our choirs, how to find that balance between performance and congregational leaders. And I had the great joy of working with Reverend John Bell on many occasions, and of course I learned a lot from him regarding congregational leadership, but not to say that the choir as congregational leaders and then as inspiring the worship is important. So, does anyone ever have any problems with your church choir if you're blessed to have one? Seen as a performing ensemble with yay applause after whoever applauds the minister's sermon, right? Not very often.
Some ministers.
We've tried and tried. This is Kara. I'm way in the corner. Okay. Yeah, we've tried. We had a music review 2 years ago and whatnot, and there's a big comment about people not liking the applause after a postlude or an anthem and whatnot. And there's only so much you can do to control the congregation's response, or I go in and cue the offering hymn so there is no applause, but we did everything we could. People still applaud, so those other people have to be unhappy. But we are not, none of my, I feel like my choir, which has rebuilt itself to a steady 8 to 10 people, over the last year, they are working together. It's just that reminder of blending and listening to each other, so nothing's poking out, and so we're all together. I was just because of the COVID years, there were some people who were like, "Oh, you're the lead singer, and those are your backup singers." I'm like, there are 4 of us. So I know, having that, it's I'm always conscious of being overly performative with your music, but you want to present and lead with quality, right? So I don't know, it's that kind of sunflower you don't want the sunflower poking above everybody else, but you want everybody to be together in song. So yeah. We
taught our congregation to do the gesture rather than clapping.
Oh.
And that works well in our context, and lots of people do that.
Yeah. No, we tried everything. Yeah.
I have a thing in the chat from Tony at Bedford. Hi, Tony. Not too far from my church in Dartmouth, and they said they tried to control the applause, but I've come to learn that their applause is not applause of being impressed, but of being moved. So there's nothing wrong with being moved, and if it becomes just a rote kind of thing, yeah, they sang, so let's applaud, then it's different. But as Tony was pointing out, it can be a gesture of just how the music has moved you in this particular situation.
Absolutely.
So just to go back, not to go back, but to continue the conversation on congregational leadership. I mean, from my point of view, I've always tried to do, respect the old, but embrace the future, and try to find that combination of, okay, how many old hymns do we do? How many new hymns do we do? What happens if we have all new hymns one Sunday, and then one Sunday all older hymns, and trying to find that balance between the two. And this conversation comes up quite a bit on our chat group. So comments on that?
Sorry, we got distracted with some noise in the hall. Can you just rephrase one more time?
Oh, so just some comments on how we deal with our congregations who want to hold on to the older style of music, but are not so open to embracing the new styles, and the difficulties of blending our vision of embrace the future, but still respect the past. Uh, I would say I get comments every Sunday on this. So and sometimes there are always half full, half empty people, but it's a matter of trying to do you say, okay, this is the way it is. This is the way it's always been for 200, 300, 400 years. So let's get on with it, or spend some time to try to explain the balance that you're trying to achieve. Anyway, any comments on that?
You can always defer to the theology of the United Church and say that we're trying to welcome and be inclusive as possible.
I think we do a disservice to new music when we don't sing it enough.
Yeah.
Because a new hymn will become an old hymn.
And that's
but
actually,
that takes time.
It does, and that's actually, so rather than using new and old, I use well-known and lesser-known.
Yep.
And we have some from More Voices that have moved very clearly into the category of well-known. We still have some in Voices United that are considered lesser-knowns. And so my hope usually, when I'm allowed to have more of a say, is to balance that most, we're at 3 hymns and an introit right now. And that one of the hymns is a lesser known. And they did start that way. Did we know Let Us Build a House when we first started? No. Is it now a well-known? Absolutely. Did it take time? Yes, but it was worth it. Yeah. And so trying to do that kind of thing. I've also quoted to my choir, and to anyone from the congregation who wants to listen, Fred Graham, who at a workshop I was at when I was first getting started, talked about picking from the whole menu board. And not just having the same thing from the menu every time. Yeah. And to embrace the word eclectic. And I loved that. And 15 years later, I'm still doing it as much as I can. But that's it. If you do the blend, the congregation is usually a little more forgiving than if you put in nothing but brand new for 1 week and then nothing but everything well-known the following week, because then they'll say, well, how come we can't have it like that every week? But if you do it gradually, it takes time, but they're still not going to always like it. You're still going to have to listen for the grumble when the hymn is done that tells you they didn't like it. But it does, my experience is that system is worth the time.
The other side of it is I work with the clergy. All of us are in our 30s, and there's contemporary music that they like, that they want to hear. And we have this one song that we've sung a lot, but it's just kind of developing that, like, well, that's the song that we love, and I know that's the song you love. Like, I love it, but I don't love singing it every 6 weeks, and I know the congregation is, and it's like, but the congregation is moved by it. They're only going to be moved by it, like, if you sing it on a regular rotation.
Are they moved by it because the minister is moved by it and they don't want to disappoint the minister? Which is always, that's a real
And then the other challenge I have with newer stuff is I get new material from the ministers very last minute without being able to check the copyright or licensing on it. And then this is on a Wednesday or Thursday before service, and just having to go up against that brick wall of, like, the rights are not available. Also, the music is not available. You're asking me to transpose like a song out of nowhere, and they just have no
transcribe.
They get transcribed. Yeah, they just don't. There's no response to it. It's just kind of, nope, that's the way it is, and it's in the program. They kind of so that's what I'm facing, where it's like we have a good balance generally between, like, the More Voices and Voices United and contemporary hymns, but then there's that other layer that happens, an influence that happens that vetoes you, and it's like, but I'm going against
that recognition of not needing to practice.
Teaching a very pop, like, very current 2010, you'd hear it on a radio to, like, 70, 80-year-olds who don't It's just that's the other layer that could happen with the new stuff, which you want to welcome new stuff, but you also have to make sure that there's still a lot of preparation that goes behind it, and not be totally driven with inspiration spare of the moment. Yeah. Sorry, that was my level.
Okay, sorry, Kim has her finger up there.
I just want to say I ask clergy for scripture readings in advance and a thematic approach. I need to know. I don't know what they're going to say in their sermon ever. But there's a liturgical calendar. There is, prescribed readings from the lectionary. Like, where are you taking this? Is it anniversary Sunday, whatever? And I select music, and I need to touch every soul in that congregation through music in some fashion, no matter what the generation. So when I'm choosing music in a service, absolutely everybody sitting there has to feel comfortable singing at least one hymn, something that is in their long-term memory and that moves and inspires them. I also consider it my job and the choir's job to enable that. And in the United Church, if we look at our manual and we look at our structure, the clergy are ordained by the church. They are worship and spiritual leaders. We as musicians are hired by the congregation. So there is a difference in terms of roles and responsibilities. And there are clergy that believe that the musician reports to them. I choose not to work with them, actually. If you're going to be, if you're not going to respect my 40 years of experience and study, then I don't think we can work together here. So it has to do with fit, knowing your congregation. It's not about a particular song, it's getting the framework so that we can all worship together.
Yeah,
And not every musician fits every congregation.
Yeah, for sure, Kim. And I've seen some churches, I don't know, maybe you've seen this, Tony, as well in Dartmouth, where some of the new churches say, okay, we're going to go once a month on a Sunday night with the old traditional style, and the other, I think, a Life Branch is doing that, and the other, we're going to have 2 or 3 services for the more contemporary style, so the congregation can choose. But a lot of congregations aren't big enough to be able to do this sort of split between, okay, we're going to have an old style one once a month at 8 o'clock at night on a Sunday. So has anybody else experienced that kind of semi-solution to this particular problem, which is not a really good solution at all? And, did anybody else experience that sort of issue?
I'm Murray Young. I live here in Thunder Bay, and we have not experienced that solution because we don't have enough people in the congregation to have more than one service a week. But hearing about other people's challenges makes me realize what blessed circumstances I have, because we have, I think, a good balance between well-known and lesser known or unknown, and we are, in an ongoing manner, we are always trying to slowly but surely expand the repertoire of the congregation. And I've never heard grumbling afterward. that someone doesn't like something, if anyone was grumbling, I think I'd hear about it sooner or later, but there's none of that. Our congregation at Harmony United is the result of an amalgamation between what used to be Knox United and Current River United. And Current River United was very adventurous in expanding their repertoire, and that was largely the result of a lay worship leader who started coming to our church, and she was unfamiliar with almost all the hymns, so she chose them, and she didn't even give a thought to who knew what. And so that was great because the congregation adapted to it very well, and they just tried whatever the choir sang. And but the other congregation that we amalgamated with was much different, a much more limited repertoire. So we've been in the process for the past 5 or 6 years of trying to keep expanding the repertoire for the people who had a limited repertoire before. And it's an interesting challenge, but I think we're managing it successfully. I'm not sure if I even answered the question.
No, for sure you did, and it's really an interesting amalgamation issues for sure, and how that can enliven and can also destroy in certain situations. But then it becomes a matter of personal preference. We cannot allow ourselves to say, okay, to go down to the lowest common denominator, as I call it sometimes, and where I said, okay, I kind of throw up my hands and say, okay, whatever you want. Sometimes that feeling comes in as opposed to, this is what the Spirit is calling us to do now in our congregation, and let's get it done. And that's an interesting issue as well. Another issue that we haven't really talked a lot about is youth ministry. I know a lot of us don't have a chance to have a youth ministry in our churches, or to engage in ideas of liturgical dance and other bringing in other musicians to help us with the worship we want to present. Just kind of curious how, if other people have a situation regarding youth ministry that's particularly difficult, or something they could share a really good success story with us about that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Tony. Yeah.
Oh, great. I couldn't see my green block lighting up there. So I've been the music minister at Bedford United Church now. It'll be 4 years in August. I was attending before that. But when I went there, they had a very vibrant number of youth. But of course, like all churches, when kids graduate and move on, you have to wait for new babies or hope that, you have teenagers. So they used to have a group, actually they were well known here on the east side, I guess, for a few years, called Regenesis. And they would sing at various youth functions and conferences and whatever. But we had the issue when I came in that the majority of those kids had graduated. So now we were left in this, well, what do we do now? We had this group, we no longer have them. So I created another group, and we're known as Generations. And so basically what that is a mixture of age 11 to 111, if they exist. And so it's a mixture of beginning guitar players, a bass player, drummer, and so on and so on. And we have 6 singers, and they range from age 11 to 60 something, I believe. The positive outcome of that in our church has been incredible. So we're about 2 years in now, and they have become a once a month ministry team. So they usually get the last Sunday of the month because they have the whole 3 weeks prior to rehearse for that Sunday. I know that that's not a possibility for every church, but what I have found as a result of that is there's been more acceptance from the congregation in some updated worship because you have a mixture of a couple of youth mixed with adults, and now we have our seniors sitting back there and they're totally amazed that these kids want to be ministering with adults and so on and so on. So that is if that's a possibility in other churches, I'm sure it would be a great thing. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Mixing the age groups sometimes if you only have a couple, because I know small churches. I come from Newfoundland. If you couldn't tell by, and the small churches over there in the small communities, there are no youth left. You know, it's aging congregations, as you know, and that's common across Canada. I just wish if I could rewind the clock when I was back there, I had thought of that sort of thing because there were always a couple of young people, you know, that were coming with their grandparents or whatnot, and I think it would have been a positive outcome had I done that. So I don't know if there's anyone here today that has a mixture of people in your church that you could do that kind of thing with, but it's worth giving a shot.
Yeah,
That's very
thanks.
No, that's really good idea. Really good idea.
Yeah, thanks, Tony, for that. I know it's always. Do they have like a? Would they be doing the whole worship, or like just a time of wondering, or something like that, for lack of a children's time? Your intergenerational ensemble, for lack of a better word. Uh, it sounds like a really good idea to try to do that. When do you practice? When do you rehearse? Do you rehearse? You just kind of show up on Sunday, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Do you do,
So they do the whole service, and I'm kind of the coach behind the team. So I'm at the piano, and then we have all our other musicians. But they're leading the service. They're announcing the hymns. Usually, what we do is I like to incorporate something for everyone when we do those services. So typically, we do at least one or two pieces from Voices or from more. Voices United. A piece or two from More Voices, and their anthem is always something new and contemporary. So, for example, my background up until I guess 10 years ago was Salvation Army / Pentecostal. So I come from a whole gamut of explosive worship and songs and charismatics and all that. You know, I've reined myself in to be within our United Church bracket in Bedford.
Oh,
That's been a learning experience. But that said, I don't know if any of you guys in your churches have a CCLI license or not. You know, we use the one license, but we also have the CCLI license, which allows us to use any praise and worship from all of the big publishing companies, whether it be Hillsong, we changed some words, by the way, Hosanna Music, all kinds of stuff.
yeah,
And, you know, there's certain praise and worship songs that really work as amazing anthems. And when I first came to United Church in Nova Scotia, because in Newfoundland, where I'm from, they don't use More Voices. It's just a hymnal, and it's actually a different hymnal. I forget the name of it. But they sing a lot of these Southern gospel choruses in Newfoundland because there's that influence from churches working together within communities. But I noticed first time I ever went to Bedford and I saw the More Voices book, and I'm looking through it, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's a Pentecostal song. That comes from because a lot of these songs are from the 80s and 90s, but they've only been working themselves into the United Church sphere, in the last so many years. So to see that, I thought, okay, well, that gives me a little bit of grace. I know I can probably swing some new stuff in there. So when I took the role of the music minister there, I started bringing in some of these, I don't know, contemporary type worship songs from CCLI, adjusting words here and there to fit theology of the church and so on and so on. And the response has been amazing. You always get, you all been in church for a long time like me. So you always get, say in a group of 10, you have one or two that are at least cantankerous about something. So that happens when we pick new music. But the number of elderly, I'll use the word elderly loosely, congregants that come up to the team, the generations, this mixed bag of ages, and just tell them how they were so moved by the anthem or how the music just touched them today, and to see the young ones there mixed in with, the adults. Yeah, you can tell I'm excited about it because I just
well,
we do definitely put a lot of rehearsal into it. We rehearse once a week. And sometimes getting close, we do twice a week. But now that we're 2 years in, they were all beginning musicians when they began. Their musicianship has really grown. And what I find, I'm also a music teacher. That's my main job. And I teach privately. I find the ministry, it's not only a ministry to the congregation, but for me, it's a ministry to the musicians because I'm nurturing their instrumental growth. I'm not a drummer, I'm not a bass player, but I hear it in my head and I can say it out loud the way I want it to sound. And anyway, I know I rambled on, but I meant to say yes, we do rehearse 3 times a month, 4 times. There you go. I'm done.
But it's really interesting program and approach. I moved from another church and I said, we did have a CCLI license as well, and every so often I would say, oh, not another one of those happy crappy pieces, which is unfortunately the designation that would come up with some of those. So it's a good balance between those two resources. And just to move on a little bit to our resources that we have available as musicians, we have obviously talked about Then Let Us Sing. We know we have Gathering. We know we have our own Facebook groups where we exchange music and ideas and issues. Some particular regions have their own Facebook groups, and they have there's not so much of connection to the entire Music United community, which we try to create here at this conference. So we have some issues regarding how do we communicate amongst ourselves some of these issues. Are you able to have conversations with others in your region, either through your regional moderator or through just small community conversations? Because these conversations need to happen beyond just what we do here at Music United. So, any questions about that? Issues? All I can say, and I'm sure that Bruce would back us up, just continue to use the communication channels that we have so we can talk these things out. And it's good to have, and I think it is a moderated Facebook group. So we're not going to get some crazy ideas out there that shouldn't be on the Facebook group. Sorry, Bruce.
If somebody does something that needs to be flagged, flag it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then my role as moderator is I pull content when it's really offensive.
You've been really fast at that because there was at least one
I do my best.
I know.
But yeah, that's the thing.
But there's other resources we have too as well. I mean, I know some of us are involved with the RCCO, Royal Canadian College of Organists, and some of us are involved with Hymn Society. Some of us are involved with our local provincial choral organizations, or PCOs, that have a lot of material that's available to use. They have lending libraries, so I hope that some of you are able to reach out to your provincial choral organizations as well. here in Nova Scotia Choral Federation are really, really good with what they have. Every province has a provincial choral organization that is willing to work with you. CAMAC, other groups that are obviously more secular in nature, they also have a good connection with a variety of ecumenical churches. So hopefully we have all the resources that we need. Is there anyone who has trouble just getting the resources or getting access to things?
I just want to express some gratitude for Music United and all of these organizations and the Facebook pages and things like that. I'm a social media junkie. I am on numerous Facebook groups related to church music ministry. And the collegiality I feel with Music United and some of the other organizations I'm involved in is critically important. We are in small organization churches often, and we're behind our keyboards and we're doing our thing. And it's very difficult to know sometimes how to deal with various situations and find music and what has your experience been here, who's got Easter anthems, that sort of thing. To me, that's been a critical part of my music ministry, and I want to thank you all for participating and being part of that.
Thank
Thanks.
thank you, Kim. Yeah, I know everyone. I'm relatively new to the. I mean, I've been involved for many years, but specifically to this group. It kind of leads me to just a last need that a lot of us have, and that is how do we deal with nurturing our own spirituality? We're so busy at getting to church and getting the choir organized and getting all the stuff organized and listening, and that by the time the service is finished, he said, "Oh, I didn't have any chance to pray or to allow myself to let the Spirit move me or to be a part of what's happening." So I just wonder how other people deal with your own spiritual needs when often our Sundays are so full of just doing as opposed to being able to absorbing.
Well, it's not enough. But one little start is I've gone back to trying to get to the church before everybody else. And making sure that in that time that I'm there by myself, that at least 5 minutes is spent in quiet prayer. And just, sometimes it's only a couple of sentences and it's not 5 minutes, but just trying to just make some time for that kind of thing. I will say, one of the other organizations that Kim and I have both been involved with, Summer Institute Church Music, and for anyone who's ever been interested in that, they have a chaplain as part of the week. And that chaplain is usually tapped on the shoulder an awful lot for pastoral care, because it is very difficult as a church musician, as we all know, to truly feel like we can receive pastoral care. So that is something else out there that is important to remember. But just, yeah, if there's anything the community, the social media community can do to help support, we will do it. Like, that's my sense of what I've gotten out of our Facebook group for sure. And yeah, but it's hard.
Yeah, from the very beginning of this organization, it was seen as a network of networks.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier now that it's digital. Like, it used to be so hard because people are such big distances. I know at my conference you can drive 25 hours and you're still in the same region, I should say. You're still in the same region as someone. It's a little bit crazy out in our part of the world. But that was always a challenge, but now we have digital communication. And the pandemic taught us that we can do Zoom and things like that and get together and actually have intimacy. I feel I know the people that I get together regularly with really well, even though we've never met in person, things like that. So that's a big part of who we are, and yeah, I think people need to keep just asking for what they need, raising it in the Facebook group, what we're hearing, Music Matters, those kinds of things. Send it in through the website. The needs you have.
Or have a cry room.
You have a cry room.
Or have a cry
My God.
Music United Cry Room Facebook group.
Just put that in as a side chat, Facebook Messenger, that's fine, we can do that.
Byron, I can really relate to what you were saying about the busyness during the service, and for me it's bouncing between managing the sound system on the iPad and playing guitar and singing and playing drums, and it just gets very distracting. But I think the thing that is most enriching for me in recent months is personal reading. Even if it's just a few paragraphs at a time. For example, currently I'm reading Made for Goodness by Desmond Tutu and his daughter Poe Tutu, and another one is by Thich Nhat Hanh, Living Buddha, Living Christ, and I just read a page or so of those at a time, and it helps my understanding of God and my relationship with God, because as you said, I usually don't have that sense of spiritual enrichment during the service because I'm too busy.
We need to.
Time's up.
Our time is up. Sorry, Byron.
No, don't be sorry. This could go on forever. And you want to post those things into Facebook, those books, those ideas. We all have all sorts of challenges and needs and great things happening, and we are here to support each other in any way we need to. Be it resources, be it communication, be it with new programs, new ideas, trying to figure out how to make everybody happy, try to figure out how to make us happy, how to work with our ministers. It's are we getting paid for overtime? Are we getting the compensation we should be, etc. We have lots of issues, and I'm glad we had this conversation, and let's continue it in all of our social media channels.
Thank you, Byron.
Bless you, Byron.